Thank you for being here. It's a lovely afternoon, and I'm happy that we are all here. And thank you for the online participants. We see you there, and we miss you here. But thank you for being here. And today the topic is promoting global educational equity and access. And I would like to welcome all of you who are here. My name is Vaishali. I'm a counselor with the Heritage Schools, Delhi. And I would like to share some housekeeping rules that for the people who are here physically, we would like to have the masks on at all given times, even when we are asking questions. When we ask questions, we will ensure that we keep our masks on and we use the mic. And those who are online and have a question to ask, we would request you to just put your hands up, the icon there, so that we can help facilitate the process. And those who are here physically, we are here and we would know that you're here and we would connect to you. So beginning the session, I would like to invite our panelists and like to request Dr. Zia Isola, Director, Research Mentoring Internship Program, University of California, Santa Cruz, to moderate it for us, and over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here. We're super excited to be able to come together to talk about equity and access in education and what that means both for the individual and for the community. We have three amazing panelists here. Dr. Reshma, forgive me, Reshma, if I mispronounce your last name, Madhusudan.
Madhusudan, yeah. And I'm not a doctor yet, so.
Okay, oh, thank you. Okay, and Knowledge Chikundi, who's coming to us from Zimbabwe. Actually, Reshma is coming to us from Chicago, I believe. Is that right? Today, although she's normally in Bangalore.
Bangalore, India, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we have Vishaka there in the room, and Vishaka is based in Delhi. So I am at UC Santa Cruz in California. So I'm very honored to be able to present these colleagues. And without further ado, I think we'll go back to the slides so we can maximize our time to share everyone's experience and strategies for increasing equity and inclusion in education. So may we have the slides? There we go. Great. Thank you so much. So today we'll start with Reshma. She'll be talking about her work at the Creative School. And then Knowledge will share his amazing and exciting work that he's doing in Africa, reaching out to rural communities and creating science fairs. And then Vishaka will talk about the work she's doing right there on the ground in Delhi to help provide access for urban kids to a lot of really cool science through her Gurukul Academy. So next slide, please. And I think we'll just quickly go through these next few slides. It's just to give you an idea of who we are, and then we'll go straight to the presentation. So if you could flip through, please. This is Reshma with some of her students. And next slide, please. And Knowledge. And next slide, please. These are some of my students at UC Santa Cruz. I work with an inclusion project that brings students into research labs and gives them some experiences and tools in that way. And next slide, please. And here's Vishaka with some of her kids. So, and now I'd like to turn it over to Reshma, who'll tell us about her work.
Thank you so much, Zia, and thank you so much for this opportunity, IC3. Yet again, honoring all of us for our work, our differences, different works, our different ways in which we work, even during this pandemic. Really hats off to IC3 for figuring this out. A warm shout out to Michelle and Dr. Raja, because it was through them that I got to know of Zia and her work and got invited to this panel. So thank you so much. So good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to you all, of course, and a very good morning to many of us who are elsewhere in the world right now. So this panel is about equity and access. And when that question came to us and the few of us, when we got together, we really thought about how do we address this idea of diversity, inclusivity, especially looking at it from the various perspectives, not just from a perspective of how we work in our own spaces, but what can we do globally and what can we do, especially through the admission process and through our own understanding of when we invite people into our institutions, how do we create a sense of equity and access right from the beginning and not just make it a strategy that is on the side or that kind of is one part of a curriculum. So we really have been brought to our senses with the pandemic to look at equity and access. The previous panel, they were talking a lot about how in education, given it's online, it's become really, really hard for kids with different learning abilities to be a part of the online platform. Yet there's so many solutions. I'm not going to go touch upon the online platform right now, but we could take it in the questions. But I want to bring up what we have as a school. So I think our slide on the school, I don't know if the slide's on. I don't see the slides on.
Can you put that slide back up, please?
The next slide, please. Thank you. So as a school, we are looking at our vision, which is to inspire and encourage children, all children, to become abundant, conscious creators of their own lives, empowered by their soul. So this is a very new thing for many people, because when you look carefully into every little word that's there in the vision of the school, the founder, Jayshree, has really thought through this and really felt this, that we have to relook at ourselves as to what can students do and be for themselves, not for their parents, not for their teachers, not for the baggage that they come with. So schooling has to take a new dimension. And one of the way we build that is through understanding equity in the form of how we run our school. We are a community-based school. And in a community-based school, for us, an attitude of seva, which is the Sanskrit word for service or the Hindu word for service, is something that has moved us tremendously. All of us look at our own lives as a way in which we are serving ourselves or others through the giving and receiving process that we have. Now, if we start on that baseline, then even during the admission process, our parents are able to see that we are really bringing this into our everyday life, into everyday class. We have a very different school. We run bare feet in our school. We eat on the floor and we all eat together. We all eat the same food. So it starts in the kind of neighborhood that we are in all the time, in ourselves and all around us. We all, have a very diverse classroom atmosphere. We sit on floors, we sit on chairs and tables, it doesn't matter. We go outdoor for our classrooms. We are able to just adapt and be anywhere, because learning should be a continuum, cannot be separate from school, separate from your home or separate from a neighborhood. If we can blend the concept of school, home, society in the way we live, so that the 8 to 10 hours a kid spends is a continuum of their life, then you're starting a new platform for equity right there. Now, how do we, when we go into universities, when our kids go into universities, how do universities or how do other institutions into which they graduate into understand this? Because it's an atmosphere, it's something that is built every day. It's an experienced idea of living this way as a community. So equity for us starts in the fact that we are a community school. The next thing is that we have people from all walks of our life in our space. We are a very decentralized school in the sense that all our teachers, staff, students, parents come into our school for various needs. Most of our staff members, be it administrators, be it the front security guard, be it teachers, or be it parent volunteers, have children in the same school. So kids are seeing their families grow together. Now that builds accessibility to their own lives. And that helps them understand adaptability, flexibility. And it creates a sense of belonging, which then we don't need to necessarily teach separately only through a particular way of running a classroom. So we take care of plants and animals in our school. We take kids on field trips into the fabrics of India, into the society, into deep societies inside of India, so that they get to experience it through the language that they have to speak there. And this kind of a field trip can last up to sometimes 15 to 20 days. So it's like diversity being celebrated completely right into the fabric of how we structure our 10 hours of a day, or make it a continuum of our lives. That's what I wanted to mainly focus on. The second part is that to do this, if we as adults have to look at equity and access to children and really understand their own needs, then we probably have to first reconsider what we call as our limiting beliefs. Many of us grew up with many difficult situations in our lives naturally. All of us are grateful for that. All of us have a need to understand where we all came from. If we can understand and actually get rid of some of our limiting beliefs on where we came from, we might be able to see our students in new light. Because if I'm out there trying to educate somebody with a limiting belief that, say, STEM education is the only way forward for life to really be successful, then that limiting belief is not creating equity. That's already creating a break or a block in accessibility, in creating an inclusive society in general. To be a global citizen, to be useful to society, if teachers can and parents can cut their understanding of the fact that only certain kinds of education or certain ways of lives are necessary for everybody to undergo or to go through or to experience, but instead come to an understanding that kids, being human beings with their own purpose, can actually understand and be given opportunities to figure out their own purpose away from our blocked ideas. So first, in our space, we tackle our own limiting beliefs. And that can be things like increasing the way we think of possibilities for students, looking at every kind of education as important, be it a kid who wants to be a beautician to a kid who wants to fly and become an astronaut one day. So it really doesn't matter what the kid aspires at that young age. If we can, in our mindset, really be very open and have a really growth mindset for ourselves where we are seeing possibilities, that will make a huge difference. Now, to do that, we have to unlearn quite a few things. And we have a huge training program in our space to really unlearn so that we are just present more as human beings to our students so that they do not end up feeling pressurized into only one way of learning or one stream of learning. And that's one of the second points that I want to make. The third and last point I want to make before I turn this over to knowledge, to Zia and then back to knowledge, is that I'm taking my notes, that kids need to learn in a very diverse learning environment. Our space has been created with the principles and the pedagogy of the Sacred Classroom, which is a set of 7 principles and a way of learning called the 4-step learning process, where we address learning through diverse ways. One of the things we do is when we approach a new concept, we don't teach it to the T into a rigorous way right away. We actually allow a large time for exploration, a free kind of exploration in many different ways. We also allow immense time for digestion and reflection, which is without anybody actually teaching and with the kids actually doing other things. They are in their neural networks digesting their ideas, the exploration that they did, without the teachers bringing it to their attention that you are now going to be tested, or you have to remember these keywords, or you have to remember these concepts, or you have to practice these concepts. That practice, that rigor comes after the kids have got a little bit of space for safety, for exploration, a bit of digestion time, including free play, including doing things which they like so that they open their hearts. When kids open their hearts to a full learning capacity, when they are able to learn feeling safe, that they are learning in ways in which they feel comfortable with, then they're ready to take on a challenge. So the challenge that we need to look out for children, to be able to be inclusive, to be able to be diverse in their understanding, to be able to be empathetic to others, comes through the sacred classroom, through this four-step learning process that we apply over and over again, no matter what content we are teaching. So contextually, we are creating a platform of learning which is really diverse. So these were some points that I wanted to make regarding our new perspectives on how we create equity and access in our space. So over to you, Zia. I think I would like you to take, and if you need to ask any questions right now, I'll be happy to answer it. Or
Thank you so much, Reshma. And I'm fine with breaking a moment for questions. Does anybody want to follow up on Reshma's presentation? I am so always so impressed and humbled by the approach that the Creative School has. That equity is not just a matter of, we often think of that as a matter of creating access for different populations, but that also it's a mindset that we can cultivate in the students themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's transformative, right, to societies. It's truly transformative.
I mean, when we are seeing our students after being in, we are 11 years old as a school, and we're seeing students who have been here since they were 3, and now they're in their 8th or 9th grade, and the flexibility they have, it's not just body flexibility as in physical flexibility, but the flexibility of thinking, of feeling for others, of recognizing that, yeah, we can work this out, and we can find ways, or I didn't do my homework yesterday, or she didn't do my homework, but she knows this work. There's a certain give, there's a certain acceptance, which I can't explain it in any other way other than saying that, and yet the very same students, when they are in 12th grade, or when they're out there doing their A-levels or their NIOS curriculum, we see them sit tight on whatever work they want to do and complete their work in the most inherent sense of ownership, which nobody needs to dictate that, because the 4-step learning process allows for that freedom and that space. So they've completed that ability to just be free and explore different things and make their mistakes. So when it comes to delivering at the older grades, when the cognitive domain has developed at that time, there is a sense of ownership, and that I think has been very wonderful to see. They're really into society now, working and wanting to contribute in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm. It's true empowerment. It's really beautiful. It's such a beautiful model. Yes, thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions or comments before we move on to hear from Knowledge? Okay, I'd like to have the slides back then, please. And we'll turn it over to Knowledge. We have the next slide, please. There we go. Thank you so much. Knowledge?
Thank you so much, Sia. Greetings, everyone. It is my great honor to be part of this panel on equity and access in education. And thank you to the IC3 conference for organizing this big event. And I'd like to give a shout out to Sia, Reshma, Fishaka, and the team from the University of California, Santa Cruz. I see Michelle, Professor Raja. I think before I start my talk, I would like to mention this. So Professor Raja has done a lot for us starting last year. So this year we got, for the first time in history, we had 2 girls becoming science internship program, interns in the SIP program by the University of California at Santa Cruz. And so they just completed that internship. They are so empowered And I have no doubt we are going to see them achieving so many things here in Zimbabwe and other parts of Africa. So, and because we are talking about equity and access, so I thought maybe I should mention that first. So I'm going to share two stories from the work we do here. So just two stories and some background before I start on the stories. So the work I do, I started in 2013. So I was a student at the University of Zimbabwe studying for an honors degree in chemistry. And so at that time, we didn't have any program for promoting science and primary and high schools in the country. So we know most schools do not have labs. So science is taught like history. So children do not have access to hands-on practice. So they just study, read the books, and the teachers teach as if they are teaching history. So the hands-on aspect is not present. So we made a proposal to our university to start to support us in a program where we would design experiments. And so these experiments would use low-cost materials. So we're trying to use materials that can be bought from supermarkets. And then on Wednesdays and Thursdays, we would visit schools. So a team of undergraduate students would visit local schools. And the idea was to expand the program to other universities across the country. And the program had amazing impact because we started with 2 schools, and one of the high schools we started with. So we started in 2013 in October, and then in the national exams in 2014, the pass rate in science in that school rose from 56%. So in 2013, the pass rate in the national exams was 56, but in 2014, it rose to 83%. And the impact, I remember being called by the Minister of Primary and Secondary Education. So they said, well, we see the impact of your work. So what's next? And because we didn't have a science fair in the country, so we wanted to create a platform for young scientists in primary and high schools to showcase their research and innovations. And then we created the Zimbabwe Science Fair. So I've been doing this work since 2013. And so we spend most of our time visiting schools, doing what we call science shows. So the science shows, we demonstrate extraordinary science concepts using everyday materials. And we always try to use things that can be found in that community. So we do in the cities, we do in rural communities, and sometimes we present our science shows in churches. So for the stories I'm going to share, so can we go to previous slide?
Back to the beginning.
Yes. Yeah.
Go back one more, please. Yep. There we go.
Right. So I'll start with this one. So here I was doing a science show in a place called Nkai. So if you Google it, so Nkai is one of the poorest communities on earth. So it's 700 kilometers from Harare. And so that was my first time to visit this community. And they are a different tribe from mine. And if you go back in history, so some things happened in the 80s and 90s where our tribes were fighting. And so it was my first time being there, and it was an amazing experience. So here you see that girl, because when we are doing science shows, we try to engage the audience. We I call out volunteers to come and do the science shows with me. So here you see that girl, so her name is Angela. So she was in grade 6 at that time. So that was in 2017, in June 2017. So this activity, we call it the film canister rocket. So that's the activity we use to teach children about rockets, also about space science. We tell them, well, we have a field called astronomy. We do have people called astronauts, things like that. So I called up a volunteer, and this girl came up. And so at first, so because these kids, they have big dreams. You ask them what you want to be when you grow up, they tell you some big professions. So I asked her what she wanted to be when she grows up. And the answer she gave me, she said, I want to be a housemaid in Bulawayo. So Bulawayo is the nearest city to Nkai, which is about 300 kilometers from them. So her dream was to become a housemaid in Bulawayo, so the nearest city. And it's really touching to see a child, a grade 6 child, saying, I want to be a housemaid, because you would expect I want to be an engineer, I want to be a medical doctor, like this, a lawyer, so big professions. But she said she wanted to be a housemaid. And so for this activity, we'll be using bicarbonate of soda and vinegar. So these are materials they know, so you can find these in the kitchen. So it's not something that's, it's something that's relevant to them. So, and so now we're doing this activity. At first, she was not comfortable. So we launched our first film canister rocket. And these kids, they're so excited seeing the film canister popping up and going up. So we did our first rocket, and I thought maybe let's do it again. So we did it for the second time. And for the second time, she was now comfortable now helping in the mixing of vinegar and soda. And as we were doing the second activity, the second rocket, she said, no, I now want to be an astronaut when I grow up. And so that was a big, so it really meant a lot. So whenever I remember this story, I feel, well, we can do a lot. We can achieve a lot in this world if we can give young people access to knowledge, access to activities like this. So that's one story. And I believe she is going to be maybe the first astronaut in Zimbabwe. And she's working hard. She's now in high school, doing very well. Okay, so next slide.
And then we do want to be mindful that we have time for Vishaka's presentation too. So this is such the stories are so wonderful. I don't mean to rush you, but I want to make sure that we have time for everyone.
All right, thank you so much, Sia. Now, so here you see this young boy called McDonald. So that was in 2018. So he had visited his grandmother in the rural areas, and he could not read at night because there's no light. There was no light there. And so it became his goal to come up with a solution to that. So when he came back to the city, he came up with a way of harnessing waste and a certain weed called hyacinth, a water weed that he's using. And he came up with a way of generating electricity from that. And so, next slide.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, so McDonald, so with this project, so when he presented it at the Zimbabwe Science Fair, because this Zimbabwe Science Fair gives these young people the platform to showcase their work, and we also then support them with opportunities to international science fairs and other competitions. And he made history in 2018 and 2019 when he now started growing his project into a company. So right now he has a social enterprise called Everlasting Technologies. So using that technology he developed in high school, and now they are lighting up homes in the cities and rural communities. So in the next slide, you can see the Everlasting Technologies. So that's, you see this, his technology lighting up homes in Zimbabwe. And so that's the work we do. We give them access to platforms, access to hands-on experiences in science. And so I decided to share these two stories, and so that we can see how giving access can change the world. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening to my talk, and I will be happy to respond to questions.
Thank you so much, Knowledge. Yeah, that's really, truly inspirational how that idea of access is so empowering, and how the students' lives, not only their lives, but the well-being of the community is transformed by that. Does anyone have any quick questions for Knowledge before we move on to Vishaka? Okay, then I'd like to now go to the next slide about the one that starts with number 16, I believe it is, for Gurukul Academy. And Vishaka.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Zia. So while we move to the slide, let me first thank all of you here for having me here at the IC3 conference. I'll introduce myself a bit. I am an engineer by qualification, a marketing and communication professional on weekdays, and on weekends I have a team of passionate science communicators with me who teach young students right from the beginning of class 1 to 10, and even we go beyond the we reach out to the college students as well during the weekends and help them out to know what is out there, help them with all the information. So I'll just have the first slide, how it all started. Can I have the first slide? Yes. Okay. So while the slide is here, and I am here to tell you about Gurukul Academy. So all of you are aware about what is Gurukul. Gurukul is our ancient boarding school, that I should say, where you have the discipline and everything. But when I say Gurukul, what do I mean by that? And how did I exactly come up with this? It's my own experience. I come from a very, very good school. I got an access to go to a convent school, but I was never interested in science or any other concept for that. I was never interested. Why? Because, so you can see the guru here in the logo. He's wearing that goggles that makes him cool, having access to the latest technology on his laptops and taking the education to the kids. So that is how I came up with the logo. And that is what we are trying to do through my Gurukul Academy. It's very important that teachers should be cool. Of course, they have to maintain the discipline, but then students, they should not be afraid to ask questions. Whenever the student is asking a question, that was I think probably my experience, what it has been, that somehow I felt sometimes really stupid to ask any question. Or when even when I asked, I think I was not, the teachers, they failed to answer in that particular way. Some of the teachers, the science teachers especially. So I was scared of science forever. I didn't like it. But though I did not like it, I ended up, getting my admission in engineering. Why? I hail from Bihar. So, where the major thing is that either you're a doctor, you're an engineer, otherwise you're nothing. So, okay, fine. I landed up into engineering, and to top that, I I should, I'll just add this feather on my cap right now, that I topped my institute with good numbers. But then I knew that I don't like it at all, because there are certain concepts which I don't like to explain to the kids, etc., goes on like this. And I didn't want it to become, put myself into any of the concept or work in that concept, which will make it very hard for people to access that. So what did I do? While I joined organizations, initially I was into healthcare, then I joined some NGO who were really into science. I met some people who, the way they took science to all these children, it was really exciting. Through the exciting content, and then, the way they delivered the content, it was really exciting. I found my interest in science. So, since that day, I thought that I know what I want to do. So, next slide, please. I'll just tell you how it all started for me. So you can see a bunch of students here. I can tell you the date. The exact date was 15th of October, and that's when Dr. Kalam's birthday is there. So I went out in my local locality in Hoskas, at one place here, where I found these children playing games. And they were playing PUBG, and here the red one, he was the leader. Let me just say, it will not be fair, but still I want to say, a goon in making. How? He scared everybody around him when I went and asked them that, let's do this activity, let's paint something, let's, I was telling them stories, but he made sure that nobody listens to me. Nobody listens to me. So what did I do? I had this beautiful sketch pens, I had this beautiful papers with me, but then also these people, they were not excited to come to me. What did I do now? It was Dr. Kalam's birthday, so I had this access that I can get chocolates for them. So, what I did, one student approached to me, when I was trying very hard. He made sure that nobody comes to me, but then when I tried very hard, and one student came to me, I gave him a pen. The colors which all these students saw when it drew on the paper, slowly everyone was hovering around me, and they wanted to have that. They wanted to do that. So that's how, I experienced this, that working with underprivileged kids and the tribal kids is not very easy as it seems. What we can teach our regular students, but we cannot train them. But then I made sure that it's very, when you communicate with a student, it's very easy to figure out that they understand the language, what you want to tell them. So that's how it all started. And over the weekends, we made sure that over the weekends we conduct activities like this. We go and meet them frequently so that they do not lose interest. Next slide, please. So, here are some activities that all my volunteers, as I said, that I have a team of volunteers, and all of them are working somewhere, but during the weekends, they find time and they went out and, here is what they carried the activities. But then, the next slide, then what happened? We were doing this on ground at that moment. School closed due to coronavirus. What do we do? How do we now have the access? These people don't have the access to mobile phones or any laptops. So what now? Next slide, please. So, I really was fortunate enough to have with me these, the passionate science communicators, the team with me. They made sure that somehow they're able to reach these people, and they make a laptop or a mobile phone available to them, through which we are able to take online classes. So we did that, and what we did not have a structure in place. As of then, we did not have the structure. So we started with astronomy, because I found my interest in that and thought of taking that. So with very simple things which is available at our place where we live, biscuits. We taught them the concept of how our Earth is made up of. Then how the moon, how the phases of the moon we were able to teach through the biscuits, the Oreo biscuits, which is available. Next slide, please. So, I'll tell you something very important, which, during the coronavirus, before that also, I did not had access to many of the lectures of the renowned people who were taking across the world. But during the coronavirus, I found that I was able to connect with them, because they were taking the online classes, they were organizing programs, they were taking tutorials across. So I got a chance to connect with them. And I also got a chance to attend lectures where they came in for any kind of talks and everything. So Professor H.C. Verma was once there in a conference. And when a question was asked to him that it's coronavirus now, The lab is not functioning. How do we teach our kids? How do we tell them the concept? We don't have the equipments. And he said that, you know what? You don't need a lab. Nature is the biggest lab. So that's how we designed all these things. Like here you can see a child who made a geodesic home. We taught them the concept of triangles, why triangle is the most stable shape. We taught them about our environment at the same time. So we made sure that we are taking activities like this to them, and they are performing that at home, back at their home. So through this, what we made sure, when you must have often heard students saying, I don't like maths, I don't like physics, I don't like science at all. Through these simple experiments, we made sure that we tell them what subjects are important for, where do you exactly find it use. The next slide, please. So not only this, I also made sure that our students are able to take part in some of the international competitions, and we started the outreach program. One was Asteroid Search Campaign. The other one is, of course, the peer tutorial that we take to a lot of people now. And we have made sure that we are making it available in all the languages. Our volunteers, they are doing that, and they are taking this peer tutorial across to all the. We have 3 states right now in which this is operating right now, and the Sally Ride, through which we show the images to the students, and this is one of the NASA outreach activities. So, this is what I want to say. I want to end up by saying that, the next slide, please. I think that's the end. Equity and access is not just, when you talk about people who are economically deprived of things, you're providing them equality and access. It's about, even if you're in the same class, in a privileged school, if you are there, you make sure that you are making each and every student, the material you're making them available, and you're making sure that every one of them is participating. You're communicating with them. You're helping them. You're nurturing that habit of asking question. You praise the question, because that's how, even if a child, whether it's a deep question or it's little off the track, when you praise their question, oh yes, that's a good question, you know what, that's helped them continue in the habit of asking questions. That is what I believe, and that is what we follow now. Ask questions. I've interacted with so many scientists, so many people, like Professor Raja is my biggest inspiration right now, because he always made sure that even if I don't know the stood of the question I might have asked him, but he answered that all. So that's how I learned this, that you always encourage questions. You always answer them. Even if you don't know, you make sure you answer them in the next class. So that's all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Zia. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Vishaka. That was wonderful. Such inspirational work. We are technically over, but because we started late, I think we have a little bit more time. And I know that there's a break in the next session, thanks to Michelle for pointing that out to me. So I think we can stay and talk for a little bit if anyone has questions for our presenters, or would like to give them a little more opportunity to go into greater detail about the amazing work they're doing. If you have a question, feel free to just unmute yourself.
Hi, Zia. I'm blown away by the presentations, and I had a quick question for each of the 3 presenters and yourselves here. I know we've been talking about mentors and students, but I'd like to take a moment to reflect on what we learn as a mentor or teacher every time a student asks a question. Not about the students learning, but really turning the table around, and what have been your learning moments, each of you, Reshma, Knowledge, Vishaka, and Zia. I'd love to hear from you about learning moments for you as a mentor.
So I would like to answer that. Am I audible? Okay. So, I'll tell you that when not only the underprivileged children, not only them, but even the privileged section of the society, the children who come from there, they said that they loved the question and answers session, because they were not given an opportunity in school, back in school, to where all their questions were answered. And even while they ask questions to us, one such incident is that I did not know the answer, but then I made sure that I look for that answer and I come back to that child. So that is something that I've learned, that not feel shy if I don't know anything. I'll come back to you and I'll answer your question. Thank you. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Vishaka. Can I go next? Is that
Yes,
okay?
please.
Dr. Raja, that's a very valid question, because over and over again, given that we're running the school and we're seeing kids over a period of time, one of the things it's easy to form is a preconceived notion of what a kid is good at or what a kid cannot do. And that can be a very dangerous thing, to have that settle in to as a mentor, settle into teachers, settle into parents, where you kind of start boxing based on prior experiences with the child, on what might be the next step that the child needs to go through or the student needs to go through to succeed. But kids are free. Kids have immense potential, much more. I mean, their brains are forming at a much faster rate. Their hearts expanding, their bodies are expanding at a much faster rate than any of us. We are deteriorating, but they're still forming. They're transformative still in that way. And very often, I have come across either other teachers or parents or ourselves, myself included, where I had to catch myself and say, okay, this person is asking this question, which is actually pretty big a question for them, or is trying to do something in an aspect which at this point I might be looking at as with a limiting belief that this is not going to happen for this kid. Simple example, a kid who was with us, who's now graduated, who is in the design school of Strat, I think. When he was in his 10th grade, he had dyslexia and dysgraphia. At that time, it was pretty prominent in his demeanor and in his work. So he wanted to take up extended mathematics as a part of his syllabus. And the teachers told him, well, but you're not really scoring enough. So why don't you stick to core mathematics, which is an easier syllabus to take? And he said, no, I want to do extended mathematics. And the first thing, the first instantaneous reaction that most people had, including me, was, yeah, but that means you'll only get a C or you'll only get a D, right? Because we are so conditioned by prior experiences the student has that when they're asking something, we tend to make it only that much. But the key word that I think Jayashree, our founder, really taught us was not yet. But it doesn't mean that the kid cannot proceed from there. So if a student is showing a certain spark, to not doubt it, to not let our limiting beliefs and our understanding really, shun it to a way where it becomes absolutely useless for the child, because that's the worst thing you can do, is to discourage the child based on your beliefs and your understandings.
Great. Thank you so much, Reshma. I'm getting a message from the session room moderator that we're going to have to wrap it up here pretty soon. But I did want to give Knowledge one chance to kind of weigh in on the question. It is such an interesting question. And I see that the answer is, for most of us, is something to do with meeting students where they are as mentors, right? And really, really paying attention and really tuning in to students' potential and their experience. And would you like to say anything more in closing, Knowledge?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Zia, for the opportunity. And thank you, Raja, for the question. Yeah, my learning moments are like because I get to mentor students who want to do science projects. And I'm also a physics teacher in high school. And so the moments are in the barriers for these young people, these students, to enter into STEM. And so the barriers, because sometimes we think, these students are not getting into STEM because they don't have the resources. But it goes, some of the barriers have nothing to do with the resources. Like Reshma was saying, like the beliefs So we have to do a lot of work, like in the beliefs. For example, a girl pursuing physics, or say to pursue maths. In some cultures, maybe these subjects are said to be for boys. And yeah, things like that. And also for those who are working in science projects, I have to convince the parents that no, this thing is important, or a child wants to learn coding. I have to convince them that, well, this is not just playing on the computer. This skill they are learning is very important. So yeah, I think, yeah, my learning moments are in the barriers of entry into STEM.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been such an inspiring opportunity to listen to the three of you. And thank you again, Raja. I do want to give a shout out to you for bringing us all together and making this conversation possible. I wish we had more time. I think we've only barely scratched the surface, but I hope that everyone will keep this conversation going in their own way and in their own learning and research communities about how we can all work to increase access and equity, and what that does, keeping that at the forefront of our minds, what that does in terms of transforming both our students and society. I do want to plug the next session we're going to have, that I believe is at 5 o'clock Indian time, which will be a panel with Raja and other colleagues on undergraduate and high school students doing research. So it's very closely connected to some of the topics we've been talking about today. And that will be right back here in the same room. So maybe we can all come back again and continue the conversation as a slightly different facet. So thank you again, everyone. This has been such a treat. I've really enjoyed it so much. And thank you to the conference organizers.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Zia, and love to hear from you on your input. We didn't hear that, but if you're out of time, I understand. But if you can plug in a bit on what Dr. Raja asked, because you do such great work. We don't hear you. Very humble about it, I know.
Oh, thank you. Well, I would, as the moderator, my job is to make sure that you all have a chance to speak. But I'll just say quickly that, what we do, we work with students who are from backgrounds that do not normally have a lot of access to education, populations that are marginalized for various reasons. And in similar ways to the conversations we've had today, one of our priorities is to empower them and to give them the tools, the resources, the context, and the experiences that help them see themselves as agents and as scientists, right? To really cultivate that sense of potential and recognize their own power and their own capacity, right? The really amazing capacity. As a mentor, I think, to answer your question, Raja, for me, the lesson has been, I think, sort of along the lines of what Reshma was saying, is not to have any kind of preconception or compartmentalized conception of what the capacity of the students might be. And also to not always believe them, right? Because a lot of times when they start, they think, oh, I can't do that, or I'm only going to go on, I'm just going to finish my bachelor's degree. I'm not cut out for, people in my family don't go to graduate school. People in my family don't become research scientists. And then usually by the end of their experience, and that's thanks to the mentors in their labs too, because that's part of our program design, is to put students in very close contact with their faculty mentors and with established scientists, right? So they have that guidance and that validation. And by the time they come out, they see themselves differently. They see those possibilities as possibilities that are available to them. So thank you. Thank you for the question, Raja. And thank you for the prompt, Reshma.
You'll hear a lot more from Zia in the next session when she'll be a panelist. And
that's right. So tune in after, a brief word from our sponsors. So I think that is the conclusion. I'm waiting for the session. leaders to tell us what's next. Can we keep talking or?
No, Vrishali is there. Yeah.
There she is. Okay.
So thank you so much. Thank you all the panelists. It was a lovely conversation and the importance of having learning and strategies available to all. I think that's the grassroots learning.
Vrishali, you need to hold the mic. We couldn't hear you.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Looking forward to the next session. You've already got us all curious. And thank you for sharing from different parts of the globe and the opportunities of bringing in strategies for learning and curiosity at the grassroots level. So over and out. Thank you for everyone in the physical space and online. So have a good day.
Thank you again to my colleagues, Vishaka, Reshma, and Knowledge.